So we're going to get started in about a minute or so. If you guys could just type in where you're from and what brought you to this webinar, I'd love to know what that is, or maybe say what's your biggest challenge with networking and what are you here to learn? Great. How do we approach people? Thank you, Drew, for asking a question. Welcome to CommonGenius's first webinar. Great. I speak a lot on networking and want to know what you have to say. Thank you, Janice. Thank you for telling me that. Great. I'll continue to address these as we kind of go through. So Lucy is raising her hand. Lucy, did you want to say something? No, she's just raising her hand. Okay, so welcome to the first webinar from CommonGenius. I'll tell you a little bit more about CommonGenius later, but it's a platform whereby you're able to access experts on demand in a variety of industries. Some of these are, best-selling authors such as Nir Eyal, who would be impossible to get in touch with otherwise, product managers at Airbnb, high-level women SVPs at organizations, venture capitalists, angel investors. And it's a platform whereby you can find people that have an expertise and book time with them. So I'll tell you a little bit more about CommonGenius later. I'm the Director of Global Community and Expert Engagement at CommonGenius. Hence I do a lot of networking because I'm constantly trying to build our expert base and build our community. I also have a background here's my bio. I have a background in doing public speaking trainings. Actually was an opera singer of yore, so used to being on the stage. And I have a master's degree in foreign policy and diplomacy with a focus on gender analysis. So looking at women's rights around the world. I also formerly worked at Ashoka, where I supported our female women social entrepreneurs and did a lot of skills-based training with them. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited to be with CommonGenius and be in the tech world. So just a little bit about where we're going and what to expect. So in terms of what we're going to cover, so we're going to talk about networking best practices. We're going to talk about why women, even though I know there are men and women here and I think can both benefit. A lot of my work has been focused on researching women. So I think I can bring that unique perspective and hopefully tell you something you haven't heard before. We're going to talk about conquering your fears, fear of speaking or fear of being around people. Following up without being annoying. I get that question a lot about how do I follow up, when do I follow up, and how do I do it without irritating people, finding mentors, and we're going to take questions. So I'm also going to take questions throughout this. So basically each section will be 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'm going to leave time for 1 or 2 questions at the end of each slide. And so what you can do is just enter that question into the chat at any point while I'm talking. And if we don't get to your question, it's going to actually, Lucy, it's going to convert over to Q&A. Lucy will convert your question over to Q&A. Lucy is a marketing associate for CommonGenius. And then the Q&A, just pressed publish Q&A. The Q&A is actually pretty cool. You can upvote questions. So if you see a question that you really want answered, you can actually click upvote, and then we'll go in order of the questions that have the most upvotes at the end. But I would like this to be, as interactive as possible, and please feel free to ask questions and present challenges and challenge me. I also know that there are a lot of women in the room who are more senior than me, more experienced, or might be younger and still have a lot of know-how. So if you have any comments as well that you wanted to, Janice just said she does a lot of speaking about networking. Please feel free to pop what you have to say in the chat box as well. I want to appreciate your expertise that's in the room as well. So any questions so far? And if you're going to ask a question, I know it takes time to type. If you could just raise hand so that I know that you're typing. Okay, no questions so far. Great. So why women? Why this focus on women? There is a lot of research out there that women experience imposter syndrome at really high rates. And so imposter syndrome is, you're sitting in a room with Pulitzer Prize winning authors and you don't feel like you belong. Or even you are the top of a company and you worked really hard to get there, but somehow you still feel like you shouldn't be the CEO. You pulled the wool over somebody's eyes. That women experience that at very high rates. There's also a really great book called The Confidence Code, written by 2 journalists, that talks about a confidence gap that they studied extensively and feel like a lot of women face in terms of really taking their seat at the table. And I think that a lot of that is structural, is that it's how women were kind of, raised over time. It was to kind of like kids, like be seen and not heard. So a lot of that is working through those kind of ceilings that were imposed upon us and breaking through them, or at least, as Hillary Clinton likes to say, shattering them. And then I think that there's also something really important, which is the Me Too era, and that especially networking, we saw how high-powered men were kind of able to get away with a lot. And no one ever said anything. And it's really awkward as a woman when you're trying to climb the ladder. How do you navigate men, especially if men make advances towards you? And how do you navigate that with your career? And I think that's a topic that's not addressed very much. So I'd like to address that. Any questions so far? Okay, great. So networking best practices. So I'm going to talk about some things that you've probably heard that I'll reinforce, and then hopefully say a few things that are more original and insightful. Relationships are based on understanding someone's identity and connecting with them. And names, I cannot understate or overstate the importance of names. And I have a lot of people who come to me and say, I'm not a names person. I forget names. And I want to tell you that I was totally that person. I like to see the big picture. And I think sometimes with names is that when you meet someone for the first time, you're taking in a lot. You're taking in their body language. You're taking in what they're talking about. You're maybe balancing a drink in one hand and a food tray in the other, while trying not to look awkward, eating a pastry puff. And the name just kind of gets lost in everything that you're trying to take in from a cognitive perspective. It's called cognitive overload. So I think that happens. And so one thing that I like to do with names is still, even with focusing on names, sometimes I won't remember. And what I try to do within the first 2 minutes of the conversation, if I realized I've forgotten the person's name, I just stop them for 1 second. I say, yeah, you're right. Just tell me your name one more time. As if I know it, but I'm not positive. So let me just make sure, just tell me your name one more time. And usually that actually alleviates awkwardness, because 90% of the time they actually don't remember my name. So then they're like, oh, I'm Susie. What was your name again? Oh, I'm Samantha. And then at that point, you took everything in, you've taken in their appearance, their body language, whatever else is going on, and then you can focus on the name. But in general, in terms of, being able to relate to people, even calling someone by their name at Starbucks on their name tag, they will be so nice to you because they're so appreciative that someone's actually paying attention to their name, because it's a symbol of your identity. Business cards. So also the I ran out of business cards thing just doesn't cut it. If you're going to a conference, bring 100 business cards. Be prepared to hand out business cards. That's just something that is very important to networking. And you can get business cards pretty cheaply now. Vistaprint makes $30 business cards. Moo makes $30 business cards. There's sites where you can go and get them graphic designed for pretty cheap. And if you're unemployed or you're in a period of unemployment, what are you good at? Figure out something to make a business card about. Are you a really great writer? Are you a women's rights expert? Are you a product designer? Make a card that looks like you have your own business, because A, who knows, you could get a private client, and B, it feels a little less awkward than, saying, oh, I don't have a card because I don't have a job right now. So really important too is thinking about what do you do to invite people in? So I'd love to ask you guys if you could put in the box in the public chat, what are some things that attract you to people? What are things that people do that invite you in or make you want to talk to them? A lot of the research also shows that women ask less questions than men. So I would love to reverse that in this group, because I know we have a lot of women in the room. Okay, well, if I see something pop up, I'll address it. But think about what invites people in: openness, kindness, smiling, laughing. What do you do in a room that makes people want to talk to you? And do you look approachable? And I feel like a mom when I talk about phones, but like, it's so tempting. And even for me, if I don't know anyone, it's super, super tempting to like whip out my phone and start checking email if I feel awkward. And that is like the biggest no-no in networking. It's like, it basically says, don't talk to me. I'm busy and too important for you. And like, if someone comes up to you, you're interrupting something. So that's so, so, so critical. It's also important if you think about allyship. So what you could do is try to meet somebody in the room, and then, once you've made one friend, you could navigate the room together. So if you're feeling a little bit awkward and unsure, make one friend, talk to one person. If you hit it off, then you can talk to other people together. Now you have an ally, because that can be, I know sometimes it feels kind of awkward by yourself. So find that ally. Also know that like sometimes you have to think about like you're giving a gift to somebody too. Like if somebody's standing there looking kind of awkward and alone, they're feeling the same thing you are. So if you walk in and start talking to them, they're going to feel good. And this happens a lot. Like I'll go up to someone who, is by themselves and it looks like they're kind of closed off, but then they like light up like, oh, someone's talking to me. Like I'm dying to engage. I didn't want to be the person to go make the approach. Always be better to be overdressed than underdressed. That's really, no one is ever going to say, oh, like who's the guy in the suit, or like who's the girl in the great dress, in a negative way. Even if everybody in the room looks like a schlep, you'll still look great. So always err on the side of being overdressed. I also want to talk about something pretty important that I mentioned earlier in terms of the Me Too era. And I was asked this question yesterday about how do you negotiate advances in networking events, especially if you feel like it's somebody who's like a well-respected man or woman. And I think this is pretty important. And so there's a couple things that I kind of wanted to say about that. First of all, sometimes I think there's a misconception for women that, oh, if this guy is, clearly attracted to me and making advances to me, he could help my career. I would take that and dump a grain of salt over it. Oh, Christine has a great question there too. I'll answer that at the end, Christine. Things will, it's important to keep in mind, if they're like really, really hitting on you and, you think they're going to help your career, maybe they will, but they're probably going to want something in return. And I think the whole Harvey Weinstein thing shows a lot of women that were really worried to call him out or went to his hotel room when they probably knew they shouldn't have, because they were worried that he was so well connected and he could blacklist them, blah, blah, blah. But then look what happened. There was this cover up for 30 years of him abusing women. And also the other thing is there's other well-connected people in that room that aren't going to be hitting on you. This is not the only well-respected, well-connected, and you don't have to be rude. You just, if it becomes like, you can mention your fiance, your boyfriend. Sometimes I even wear a fake engagement ring if I know it's going to be a super male dominated event and I don't, want things to be perceived as I'm looking for a husband, or, that things are going to turn somewhere. I'll mention my husband or my fiance pretty early on. And there's other people that are well-connected and well-respected who can also connect you with people who won't also be trying to sleep with you and making you feel really uncomfortable, and wanting something in return for helping you. So that's what I would say with regards to that. So we have a great question from Christine. What do you do when you approach someone and the convo falls flat or they don't seem interested in talking? So there's a couple things I would say here. One, remember that horrible reality TV show where it was like, next, if someone doesn't seem interested in talking, like, move on. They're not that engaged of a person, and you don't really necessarily need to talk to them. Like, there's a lot of people in the room, and I think the biggest thing is not to internalize it. Like, oh, they don't want to talk to me. There's something about me they don't like. They don't find me interesting. The person could also just be extremely introverted and shy and just feel really uncomfortable. You can do as much as you can to pull them out, but ultimately, if they don't want to talk, they don't want to talk. And there's plenty of other people that would be interested in talking to you. I would also say just to be well-read and to keep on trend with what's going on in the news, in the world, to read authors, things that are going to make you have topics of conversation. Like, oh, what did you think about, hear about the earthquake in Indonesia? Like, what are your thoughts there? Something that is relative to like what's going on in the world. Do you hear about the elections in Brazil? Something like that, so that you have something to bring up. I'm in the Q&A tab, not the chat tab. Thank you, Lucy. Public. Oops. Sorry, guys, I was on the wrong tab. As you can tell, this is our first webinar because I totally missed that. But find interesting things to bring up. If you are well read and traveled, you have things that you can bring up, and you'll be surprised what engages people. To go back to the things that I totally missed in terms of what invites people in, Erin says a smile, totally. Friendliness, like kindness, will get you everywhere. Eye contact, Kyle, that's huge. Making eye contact with somebody shows that you want to connect with them. That's really, really important. Amber, they have expertise that I want to learn. So, that's the other, actually, that relates to the other question is, ask questions. If a conversation falls flat, like, come up with a question, like, what brings you here? What did you think of the talk that we just went to? What did you think of this? Like, there's so many questions out there. Like, where did you grow up? Where are you from? Where was your last vacation? There's so many things that you can ask somebody. What was something surprising you learned today? And you'll be surprised. Eye contact again, finding something to relate on, simply saying, join our convo. Christine, I can tell, is a social butterfly. I love that. Is just saying, hey, if you see someone standing on the periphery, hey, would you like to join our conversation? People will be so unbelievably grateful that you are reaching out to them, especially if they're kind of like they're alone. Hey, would you like to join us? Oh my God, it's just the best gift you could do. It's like asking the kid on the playground who's alone to play with you, and his eyes just light up. And before that, he might have looked really awkward and uncomfortable. And as soon as you say, do you want to join us? It's like, phew, yes, please, I'd love to join you. So I love that from Christine. And I've got, does consciously avoiding a man hitting on you put us in a weaker position to start a conversation? I think that's a really good question, Amber. And I think you don't want to go into it expecting that someone is going to hit on you. Like, there are amazing men out there that can be, some of my main mentors are incredible, incredible men. And I think you go into it expecting the best. And that's the thing about getting over your fears too, is like, expect in the room that people want to be your friend, that they have good intentions. And that's a way in general you should go about life, and you'll be a lot happier. Maybe get screwed over sometimes, but a lot happier if you expect that people have good intentions. It's only, I think the question I got yesterday was like, once it is obvious that someone is, putting his hand on yours, he's asking what you do for fun, asking if you want to get drinks later. When it becomes very, very clear that he's hitting on you, how do you steer out of that conversation without being rude? But I think Amber is absolutely right, we don't want to operate from a position of fear either, of like expecting that something bad is going to happen. We want to, operate from an idea that only good things are happen, and that people are most people are really good people, whether it's a man or a woman. So thank you for that question, Amber. Okay, I'm going to move on for now. Getting over your fears. So I used an I Love Lucy photo because I love Lucy, and I love her because she's so untraditional, and she just doesn't care what anyone else thinks. And I think that's a really big piece of it. There's a really good networking expert named Keith Ferrazzi, and he talks about like, stop focusing on yourself and wanting people to like you. Start focusing on the other person and caring about the other person and connecting about the other person and learning. There's so much, if you think about networking as transactional, there's like, you're not going to win. So I was at a conference in India, and I had a badge that said investor. And a guy walked up to me. And first of all, I think it was funny. It was a guy, because it was a women's entrepreneurship conference. And he walked up to me and he goes, "Hi, I have this product, blah, 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 really, really fast. What can you do for me?" And I just was like, whoa, what? Like, that is not going to get you anywhere. Like, there is nothing about what you just said that made me want to help you at all. You have to establish a connection with somebody. Like, so think about it in terms of building a relationship and learning and understanding someone's, like Amber said, I want to learn from their expertise, and like understanding someone's expertise versus I need something from this person. I want something from this person. Focus on having a good conversation and coming out with new insights that you could use, because not every person is going to be really helpful to your career or fund your startup, but you could walk away with some really, really fascinating insights that could totally change the trajectory of your life or interest you in getting into a new industry or field. So you just never know. Just always operate from that I want to learn mindset versus a transactional mindset. So that being said, do your research beforehand. So something that also can just like relieve awkwardness in general is if you know who's going to be in the room. And the great thing about technology now is there's so many conferences that they show you who's going to be there before people are actually there. You can see a list on Eventbrite. Things like SoCap had like their own app where you could look up all the different participants and what company they were from. And so, yes, you want to learn from people too, but if you are there at a conference with a purpose, there's also certain people you want to meet. So be prepared for knowing who those people are. Look them up on LinkedIn, read their articles, follow them on Twitter, know what they care about, know what they're thinking about. And then that'll also ease a little bit of the awkwardness in the room, because you kind of know who you're looking for as well. So that research is really important. If you have someone who's underneath you and you don't have time to do that because it's a lot of work, ask them, can you please look at the list of people coming to this conference, identify the 20 people that I should meet, and then give me bios and photos of all of them so that I can study on the plane. I do that a lot, and it is like unbelievably helpful because I recognize someone instantly. And if there's only 3 hours, I make sure that I talk to them. Push yourself. So a blog that will be out shortly that I just wrote is about how there was a study of, I can't even remember how many events it was, but it was hundreds of events across different universities, and saw that women asked questions at a startlingly lower rate than men. And so these were events, so it included like seminars, conferences, even university class. And so what is going on there? And are we standing on the fringes, not allowing ourselves to participate? And sometimes when I participate, even if I'm nervous, I think to myself, okay, this isn't about me asking a question and necessarily getting an answer, which is good networking in itself. But like, just by being a woman and asking a question right now, I'm advancing women's rights, because I'm showing that women can ask questions. I'm showing that women can be leaders. I'm showing that, women have strong voices. So I like to, if you could relate it to a broader cause, like I really liked Madeleine Albright, who I actually just saw yesterday, who's so amazing. Madeleine Albright said, at first I was really hesitant to speak out in meetings as a woman Secretary of State. And then I realized that if I didn't speak out, the voice of the United States would be missing. So she took it away from her and she moved it into, wow, like this is going to have like a global impact. I'm speaking for my country right now. If I don't speak up because I'm feeling afraid, the US's voice is going to be missing. And I thought that was incredibly, incredibly powerful. Oh, and she also said something yesterday that I thought was just hysterical. She said, it took me a really long time to find my voice, and now I'm not going to shut up. So I thought that was hilarious. Like, it takes you a long time to find your voice, and there's not that many women who do speak up. So be the one to speak up. Encourage other women to speak up. It's so important to women's rights in general and to having leadership. And in this book, The Confidence Code, they talk about how a couple anecdotes from senior partners at firms who didn't promote women, even though they were incredibly competent, because they weren't speaking up at client meetings. And so it made it look like the women didn't know what they were talking about, or didn't understand the client. And so, this book kind of posits, like, does confidence actually matter more than competence? And men tend to be overconfident and not as competent, and women tend to be overcompetent and less confident. But does confidence matter more when it comes to getting to the top? And this book says that it does. And I think there's a lot of gravity to that. And then I always tell people, if you put yourself out there, what's the worst that can happen? People will respond kindly. And this is with regards to online too. If you're looking for a new job, if you don't tell anyone, no one can help you. Like, post on LinkedIn, hi, I'm exploring new opportunities in the realm of blah, blah, blah. Or if you're in like an industry Facebook group, hi, I'm, looking for an opportunity here. And you'll be surprised, like, people do want to help. It gives them meaning to their lives to feel like they're helping someone besides themselves. So, what's the worst that happens? No one responds. Okay, big deal. Like, next, move on. So do we have any questions about this particular thing about getting over your fears? And I'm going to look in the chat and also in the Q&A. Erin, thanks, Erin. Sometimes it seems like I'm wanting something from them if I bring up wanting a new job. How's the best way to talk about that? Erin, so I think that's important. And I think that you have to establish the relationship first. You have to establish the conversation first. You have to establish the connection so that, just like I said, when that guy walked up to me and he said, if he'd said, hi, I'm blah, 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 and I'm looking for a new job, how can you help me? I would have been like, whoa, yes, you want something from me, and no, I'm not interested. However, if he had come up to me, started a conversation, we talked about the conference we were at, where do we think women's entrepreneurship is growing, blah, 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 the conversation will gravitate towards, so like, what are you up to right now? What are you involved in? And that's the point at which, if you feel comfortable, and read the person, if you feel comfortable with them and you had a pretty good conversation, say, well, I'm working here, but, I'm not sure. I'm looking at other opportunities. I'm really interested in tech or women's rights or whatever. See what they say. Some people will respond and be like, oh, like, that's really interesting. And they'll talk about how they know someone in that field and they would love to connect you. And some people will just say, that's really cool. And then they won't necessarily offer to help you. But I think it's really critical that you build that relationship first, and you don't enter it saying, I want a job from this person. You enter it like, I want to get to know this person. And if they're the type of person that like has the access to give you a job or to recommend you to someone, they're probably an interesting person with like a lot of insight that you could learn and grow from. Did that answer your question, Erin, or is there but I think the term exploring new opportunities is really good, because it's not like I'm leaving my job, I hate it. I'm exploring new opportunities. Awesome. Thanks, Erin. I'm glad that was helpful. Great. So we're going to move on. Following up. So this is so important. And I will admit to you that I used to be victim of, I'll get this person's business card, and then I'll be so terrified to follow up with them because they're really important that I'm going to wait 5 months to follow up with them. And then when they don't respond, I'm going to think that I'm not worthy, I'm not talented, I'm not, it's something wrong with me that they don't remember me after 5 months. That's ridiculous. I mean, that's like meeting somebody you're interested in dating at a bar and waiting 5 months to call them and then being surprised that they don't remember you. So don't do that. So after a long time of kind of procrastinating out of fear, frankly, I said, okay, this is not going to be helpful. So like we talked about business cards. So there's a amazing app called CamCard. Actually found out about it from a sales guy. And what it does is you can take a photo of someone's business card, and then it keeps the photo so you can see the actual photo of the card. And then it actually like imports the information from the card into the field. So the email, the name, sometimes it's a little funky, so you have to change it. But it's incredible. So, and then you can even organize it by a section. So like, you know, if I go to a conference, so I went to this thing called the Social Capital Conference, SoCap, last year, I can even organize the people that I met at SoCap into that little folder, so that when I go back through my business cards, I know that those people I met at SoCap. Or I can even, you know, put them into like a job opportunities folder or something like that. It's really great. And like I said, it's free, and I'm sure there's even better things you could do if you pay for it. But of course, if you really want to be safe, make a spreadsheet, put the people in, put down notes of how you met them and where you met them. That's the safest way if you want to back your tracks up. But obviously, that takes a lot of time, and it's hard to do unless you have an assistant or an intern working for you. So what I like to do is I take out the business cards like the day after I'm at the conference. I go through each of them, I take a picture of each of them, and then I go to connect with them on LinkedIn. But this is really important with LinkedIn. When you connect with them on LinkedIn, you want to make sure you send a message. And this is for, so they just have context of, you know, where they met you, because people get a lot of LinkedIn connections. But also it's for yourself. It's for your memory bank. So God forbid CamCard dies and, you know, you can't use it anymore. And then you are looking for a job and you see that, you know, so-and-so knows so-and-so, but you're like, oh my God, well, how am I even first reconnected to this person? I have no idea. You can look back at your chat history, and in your chat history, you'll say, oh, hey, like it was great meeting you at the Conference on Women's Entrepreneurship in Hyderabad. And that, you know, then you can remind yourself, okay, like, oh, that's where I met this person, and you have context around it. So that's really important. Also, just to beware, like if you connect with someone on LinkedIn on your mobile, it can send the connection. Like if you press connect, it doesn't give you the option to like add context until afterwards. It'll just go connect. So you have to like press connect, and then you can do like add a note with your invitation on mobile. So just be careful with mobile. So usually what I do is like, I make sure I log the business cards. Then I follow up on LinkedIn. If I want to have a meeting with them, or I think it's someone it's really, sometimes it's, you know, I'm not looking for a job, but like I find this person extremely interesting. And, you know, 10 years down the line, when whatever, you know, the world is a different place, like who knows, like we might be able to help each other out. I just find them cool and I kind of want to be their friend. Then I'm going to request a meeting, even if there's not like immediate need, like, oh, I need a job from this person, or I need a partnership or something. So in that situation, what I do is I LinkedIn message them, and then I say in the LinkedIn message, it was great meeting you at SoCap. Would love to get together for coffee. We'll follow up by email. Scheduling coffees over LinkedIn is not great, because especially if somebody's like a senior vice president, they usually have someone who's doing their scheduling for them. And in LinkedIn, they can't CC their assistant who's keeping their schedule. And so usually they'll respond and say, great, looking forward to your email. Then you have the open door to email them. If it's someone that you're like, okay, this person was cool, but like they weren't all that terrific, and you know, I don't see a need to get together right now, then just have them on LinkedIn, but also know your relationship isn't going to be as strong as having had a call with them or had a coffee with them. Christine, I will get to your question. Actually, I'll just answer Christine's question now. If you meet someone at a social function, is it better to connect via LinkedIn or Facebook? It depends what you want. Do you want them to be a professional contact that, you know, do they work for, do they work for the US government and you're interested in getting into government? Then you want to connect with them on LinkedIn. Is it someone you want to be their friend or go out with? Then you connect with them on Facebook. So I think it's like, you know, your own boundaries of, okay, like, do I want to be this person's friend, or do I want to be like professionally connected to them? Yep. Thanks, Christine. Cool. So let me just see. Erin says, when you meet up with someone you have connected with, if you are the one you initiated, should you pay for their coffee? Yeah, that's tricky. I mean, in an ideal world, I think you should offer. Usually, if someone is older than you and they know that you're like, 23 and they're 45, usually they will offer to pay just because they know that like you make a lot less money than they do. But it's always nice to offer. Say like, oh, like, can I get you a coffee? And then, they'll be like, oh, no, 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 like, let me get it. What would you like? So always, it doesn't hurt to offer. If it's someone who's like the same age as you, then I would pay, and you initiated it. Think about it like asking someone on a date, and then you should pay if you ask someone on a date. But if they're kind of on par with you, thank you for that question, Erin. Bumping emails. This is like my favorite term ever, and I learned this, and I was like, this is freaking brilliant. So if you write someone an email and they don't respond, first of all, so many more people are working remotely. They have kids, they have whatever, they're traveling, they're on vacation. Like people don't always see emails right away, especially because we have this flood of emails. And I've been victim to this. Like someone will follow up after a conference and I'm totally well-intentioned and I'm happy to meet with them, but I just miss it. Or I read it at night on my iPhone at 11 p.m. and then I forgot in the morning and it's no longer in my need to read box. So a term that I got that I love is if you don't get a response from someone like within a week and you really feel like we really had a connection, we had a good conversation, it's not like a blind cold email, just email them and say, hey, I'm just bumping this email in case you didn't see it. Would love to get together. And it usually works because people will usually be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I meant to respond. My grandfather was sick and then I was in Dubai for a business meeting and I would love to get together. And then it almost makes you feel a little bit more powerful because they now feel bad that they kind of screwed it up. I remember when I was interviewing for colleges and I had an interview for Yale and I showed up at a coffee shop and the woman just didn't show up. She wasn't there. She didn't call back, nothing. She just totally forgot. And it was Christmas and Thanksgiving and she had family members and whatever. But then like the next time I met with her, she felt terrible. So it gave me actually a little bit of an upper edge. So don't be afraid to bump emails. And I would say like follow up, you can follow up kind of every week. If someone doesn't respond after the, second or third time that you're trying to reach out to them, then I would move on. There's someone else who will want to help you. So this is also really important too, is that I think when like being, especially if you're like younger, is you think that you can't necessarily help somebody who's older than you. Like, they can be your mentor, they can help you, but you have nothing to offer them. And that's a mistake. And I always want you to think going into some kind of meeting, like, how can I be helpful for them? Like you'll be surprised. I had a friend of a friend who had coffee with me, and English is her second language. And she works at a big bank in DC. And I said, how can I be helpful? She was helping me with some stuff that I was curious about. And I said, is there any way I can be helpful to you? And at first she was like, no. And then she was like, actually, I have this article I wrote in Spanish and you speak Spanish and English. Like, could you help with the translation? Because I don't think the translation's very good. And so it didn't take me that long, but like now I feel like I was able to offer something to her that's not necessarily, she was going into the meeting thinking, okay, this girl wants something from me. I'm going to try to help her, but not thinking I can help her. And sometimes just listening to someone, just showing that I've had interviews with people where they end up, the person who's interviewing me opens up to me just because I ask questions and I'm open and I'm curious, and just like having someone to listen to, especially if they're kind of a high powered person that doesn't necessarily have a ton of people to talk to, you'd be surprised. So always remember that, and I always end a coffee, especially if it was something initiated by me, because I wanted something with, hey, is there anything that I can do for you? And even if they're like, no, there's really nothing you can do for me, then at least I asked and I sound gracious. So I think that's really important. Okay, so following up as a woman. So again, we have that shady line, and I'm going to say this for like young men too, and following up with older women or older gay men or something like that is, set your boundary. If you're going to meet with a guy and you felt like he could potentially be interested, I'm not really sure. Even if you don't really think that, if you want to have a professional relationship, meet during the day, meet for lunch, meet for coffee, don't drink, don't have alcohol, don't do happy hour. And if they respond to you, if you're like, hey, I really enjoyed meeting you at this conference, like, would you like to get together for coffee or lunch? And they're like, how about dinner Friday night? They're asking you on a date. Don't be naive. Don't be stupid. They're asking you out. And going out with them is just going to make you uncomfortable. And, maybe they will help you, but they're going to expect something in return. And then if they start drinking and start touching you, it's just going to go downhill really, really fast. So keep it professional. Keep it during the daylight. Never go to a guy's hotel room. I would even avoid hotel lobbies. I like hotel lobbies, but then it's kind of like a window to go to the hotel. Oh, there's a coffee shop right near your hotel. Like, how about that? It's also helpful too if you suggest a place. If you're like, oh yeah, I'm around, and they're like, okay, well, I'm in this area. You'll be like, okay, here, like, can I suggest a place? So that's, I think, important. So I'm going to plug my computer in, which I should have done before, but I'm going to stop for a second and see if anyone has questions. You need to make computer cords a lot longer because this is not long enough. Okay. After the first meeting, how often should you follow up to maintain the relationship? I struggle with this too, Erin, to be honest. It depends. I would say it's nice if there's somebody that you really feel like, wow, this is someone I really hit it off with. Like, I really want to, keep a connection with them. I think it's nice to follow up every couple of weeks or every month, just to be like, hey, like, if it's someone you really connect with and you feel like this is just a great relationship, every month to say, hey, like, I haven't seen you in a while. Like, do you want to grab lunch? And even if they're traveling, like, they'll appreciate that reach out. And also I think there, with technology and with email, there's also small points of contact, right? So, getting together for coffee or lunch or dinner or whatever takes a lot of time, right? So having those even small points of contact where you're forwarding them an article that reminded you of them, you're sharing with them a blog that you wrote that you feel like is, would be interesting. Maybe you met someone who, is there on the board of a homeless shelter, and this person does work with the homeless, and you want to connect them. So there's also what I call like micro points of contact. Do you follow them on LinkedIn and do you like their stuff that they post? Do you follow them on Twitter and retweet stuff? Like, people actually notice that stuff. So I think I would call those micro points of contacts, and those you should try to be, pretty regular with. That's not that easy because not everyone's posting on social media all the time. But those are kind of micro contacts that I think we now have that we didn't used to have, that we can use to kind of continually stay in touch, even if we're not sitting down for lunch. Any other questions right now? Okay, I'm gonna move on. We have more, we'll have more time for questions at the end too. A little bit behind. So finding your perfect mentor. So there's this kind of mythical idea of like mentorship, of like, who is this mentor, this mythical mentor creature, and how do I find them? So part of that is why CommonGenius was created. So I'm going to talk about that after. But I think something important to know too is there's different types of people, right? There's some people who want to be mentors, and frankly, there's some people who don't. Some people really want to help, and they really are interested in, mentoring young women. And I hate to say this, but there's a lot of older women that, grew up in a generation where there was one job for a woman at the top and there was no jobs there was no room for any other women, and they're not the most helpful. And there's a lot of other women that are incredibly helpful, but just because someone's a woman either doesn't mean she's necessarily going to want to be your mentor or, believe in promoting younger women. So it's also important to know that there's kind of two types of mentors. There's, if anyone's read The Tipping Point, that there's mavens, connectors, and salespeople. So to keep in mind too, like if you reach out to somebody who you met and you had a nice connection with and you're trying to get a job, some people are connectors and some people just aren't. They don't think like that. They might be mavens, meaning they could be great for giving you information or advice, but their mind doesn't think like a connector would. With the connectors, like, as you're talking to me and you're telling me you're in, okay, I'm not going to use that example. You're a teacher in public schools in Maryland. My mind is thinking, do I know there are teachers in public schools in Maryland? Like, that's how a connector's mind works of, oh, and I should connect you with them. Some people aren't like that. So to understand, like, if someone doesn't automatically offer to put you in touch with someone, they might just not be a connector. And also you might have to be a lot more obvious of, hey, like, is there anyone you could put me in touch with who might be able to help with my job search or with, this project or with strategic partnerships? Like, you have to be a lot more overt sometimes with people who are non-connectors, whereas connectors will just instantly, I've had people who I had one coffee with and then said, send me a list of all the organizations you want to work at, and I'll give you names and emails for all of them. He was a connector, but that was not the norm. I mean, that was one out of a lot of people that I met with. So just to know that. And also, I think when we were looking for mentors, like, who do you want to be friends with? Who do you like really enjoy spending time with? Who do you leave a conversation with and you're like, wow, that was super interesting and got me thinking, and I kind of wish I was taking notes because that person is so cool. Who is the person that you're like, I want them to speak at my next conference because I just love what they have to say. I love their presence. It should be someone you get along with. So, and there can be many mentors. And I think too, like, if you were in an age now where people are, I think, crossing industries, like I went from tech to film to music to foreign policy to social enterprise back to tech. And so for each of those fields, somebody who's in music might be able to give me good advice, but they're not going to be able to tell me how to break in international relations. And that person's not going to really be able to tell me how to break into tech. So I might need different mentors in all of those different fields based on what I'm trying to do and where I'm trying to go. So also think about, again, this guy, Keith, who's great, talks about something called your relationship map of like, okay, I had a friend call me literally last week, like, I'm looking for, a new job, and I'm not sure where to start. And, I say like, okay, who are the 5 most well-connected people you know and have good relationships with? They, even if they're not, an education specialist or a nuclear physicist, and that's where you want to go, if they're in the same city as you and they're a connected person, they will know people. So think about the 5 most well-connected people you know, and also make sure those people, like in terms of focusing on the people you want to be following up with and having relationships with, you really want to be having those relationships with people that are really well-connected and who are connectors, as well as mavens, but the connectors in terms of if you're looking for people to introduce you to venture capitalists or get funding or help you whatever. So that's really important. Like, what is and Keith Ferrazzi calls it a relationship map. So like, you could literally plot out your relationships. Like, who are like the top people I know? A lot of people keep people in spreadsheets too, just to keep track of everybody. It's not the worst thing in the world. So the other thing is community. So and especially for women, there's more and more communities that are popping up that are women focused. And those communities, that's where you're going to find women who want to help you. It's the women who specifically join communities that are like women in international relations, women in tech, women venture capitalists. They're part of that because they want to help other women. Go to those, find out what those are. Whatever industry you're in, whatever city you're in, ask someone who would know what is going on with the women in tech scene here. What is going on with, women in foreign affairs? Where do I go to meet these people? And then join those groups and go to their events and talk to people. Those are the women who are really going to help you. And there are groups like that in every city in like tons of industries now. Okay, great. So I want to step into CommonGenius, and then I'm going to take some more questions. So finding a mentor too can take a long time. It takes a long time to build relationships. Like we talked about, you don't want to appear transactional or like I'm looking for a job right away. So CommonGenius, which is the platform that I work for, actually was founded by a woman who worked for Facebook and had a really great mentor at Facebook. But she thought, wow, I'm really lucky I have this guy at Facebook, but not everyone can necessarily meet this person. So the concept of CommonGenius is basically that you could find expertise from an industry, but that you could also find mentors online and that you could pay for their time. And the mentors themselves can choose whether they want to you to pay or whether they might want to donate their fee to the charity of their choice. So it's kind of just a way to continue giving. So that's how CommonGenius was founded. So we're launching in January of 2019. Our iOS app will be out in a couple of weeks. You pay by the minute with a minimum of 30 minutes to talk to someone. So it's affordable. And we have some really, really incredible people here that you no longer have to be sitting in Silicon Valley to meet or in New York City because they're on this platform and you can just request a meeting with them. So how it works is basically you go online, you search for an expert, and then you can request a meeting with them, like 3 different meeting times, and they'll respond and say what works for them. And then we actually built a video chat into our platform. So you'll go into your meeting with them on video chat. So we also have like a lot of people who are retired now who were CFOs, CMOs, CEOs of big companies, and they want to give back still, but they also want to stay in, Palm Beach for half the year. So, it's a great way to be able to access those people as well. When we do launch, everyone who's at this webinar is going to receive a 20% off coupon for their first meeting with an expert. That'll be sent out in January and it'll be valid for 1 month. And it's just for people that are registered for this webinar. So now I'm impressed that we're not incredibly over time because I feel like I'm always over time. So I'd like to take any questions that people still have or comments. Like I said, I know there's expertise in the room too. Is there something that I said that you want to add on to? Like, please feel free. Q&A, okay. Illyriana, hopefully I pronounced that right. Kachanaku, is that right? I'm guessing it's a cha. Great. It's my time living in the Czech Republic, I think. What has made your mentorship experiences successful? What would be 3 key features? And do you prefer being mentee or mentor? I'm so glad you brought that up. I like to be both. And I think that that's part of the magic of giving back and things being cyclical. I'm going to start with that last part because I am a total hypocrite if I have like all these mentors, but then when someone comes to me and is like, clearly like, I really especially love focusing on college age women or like fresh out of college who are not super outgoing, but are incredibly talented and but are not sure of themselves. Those are the girls that I love, 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 love to mentor because I think they just need help stepping into their greatness. And I also think, it makes me leading and teaching and giving webinars like this, like makes me a bigger person and enhances my confidence level, enhances me getting out of my own head. Even just talking to, one of my mentees the other day who didn't get a job she wanted. It's like, I was in a bad mood. And as soon as I talked to her, I'm like, oh, I have all this advice to give and I'm supporting her. And this makes me feel better about myself as well. So I think you should always seek to be both. You should always seek to be a mentee and a mentor because there's always people you can teach and there's always people you can learn from. What has made your mentorship experiences successful? So in terms of being a mentor, I think is trying to reach out again, whether it's micro, whether it's a text or whether it's, calling once in a while or saying, do you want to get together for coffee? Can I buy you lunch? I want to hear about your life. That's really critical as a mentor is that you're reaching out, even if they don't reach out to you, because a lot of people have trouble asking for help. and they feel stupid, and you kind of have to pull them out to get them to really open up to you and show that you really care. And in terms of being a mentee, I think, again, it's regularly connecting. It's getting together, if it's not every month, every couple of months, and following, with my instinct, like, is this someone I really like? Do we have really interesting conversations? Do I just like get along with them really well? Do I want to be around them? Do they make me happy? Do they give me new information that I didn't have before? And like, those are the people that I really have on my list. Actually, a couple of people I need to reach out to today after this to follow up with who I haven't seen in a couple months, who fit that description, who were always amazing, and they're always trying to help me. And I think just having that regular contact and trusting, if there's somebody who you get to get coffee with and you're like, oh, this person's really high powered, I want them to like me, but you meet with them and like, you don't hit it off, like, that's not the mentor for you. It's just like friends. Like, there's some people you hit it off with, there's some people that you don't, and like, follow that. Like, the people that you really hit it off with and you have great conversations with, those are the mentors you want to have. And just to get in touch with them, whether you're in a different city or out of city. Hey, what's up? How's it going? What's going on? What's the latest with you? Even if you drop them a line in an email, I can really be appreciated. Did it answer your question, Liriana? Marginally, hopefully. Mostly. I'll take mostly. 3 key features, let's say, I would say regular contact, connecting and caring about somebody, and also being clear. I think that's also really important. I remember early on in my career when I was like looking for jobs and was like, oh, well, I'm looking for something in international relations. Like, that is so incredibly broad. So I think it's also really important to be clear. And what I would get back is, okay, how can I help you if you want to be in international relations? That is like a million people. So it's like, okay, I will, what organizations are you interested in? And like, you have to do the research too, of looking up and seeing, okay, what organizations am I interested in? Where do I actually want to work? Where has jobs that are open? Is there someone in particular like, why don't you put me in touch with? I need to do my research in order to have them help me. You have to assume that they don't have a lot of time and make it as easy as possible. Even writing up a paragraph about yourself that they could forward along is really useful. Blah, 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 here's my kind of quick bio, why I would be really good in this field, so they can just forward it along. That's hugely helpful, so they don't have to write it themselves. Lariana says, I'm still curious to know whether successful mentorship requires a structure that will build expectations and accountability of both people involved. I think in, like, if you're within a company, that to me sounds like something that would be more, something that would more so happen within a company where, someone HR is running this and there is a mentorship schedule and people meet every week for coffee and there is accountability mechanisms. In an ideal world, like, yeah, you do want accountability and you want to be accountable to someone. But if you walk into it being like, hey, I'd like you to be my mentor, let's set up a structure for how we're going to, keep each other accountable. That's like a little bit jarring. I think that's something you can kind of bring up later on of like, I could really use like a little more help with being accountable. Like, is there a way we could work on that? Again, you want to make sure you really show that you care about them and you care about the relationship. You're not just there for a transaction. Cool. So we are at time. Thank you so much for your questions. Is there anything else that anyone is dying to ask? Okay, well, you'll have my email if you have more questions. Also want to tell you about our upcoming webinars. So we have a woman who's pretty prominent in the angel investing community. She's going to be speaking next week about angel investing. Then we have a pretty an absolutely brilliant China expert who's going to be talking about US-China relations November the following week in a live webinar, and a woman who's going to talk, who's a UX designer, which is user experience, and talk about chatbots and how do you know whether or not to create a chatbot. And then hopefully we're going to have another one after that. So I hope that this was helpful and beneficial to you. Everybody that's on here, as I mentioned, is going to receive a 20% off coupon for CommonGenius. And you'll also receive a recording of this. So if you want to watch it on your own time, and feel free to reach out if you have questions. So thank you, everyone. Bye. Oh, we'll receive emails reminding us of these upcoming webinars. Yes, everyone will receive emails reminding them of upcoming webinars. And I'm also going to send everyone the blog that I just wrote about women and participation. And I'll keep you guys posted on different blogs and stuff that I write. Cool. Awesome. Thanks, guys. All right, bye.